Dort. This is Lee Dort, and I'm down to dunk. This is Lee Dort, and I'm down to Dort.
I'm Josh Giddey, and I'm down to dunk. Hey, this is Kenny Hustle, and I'm down to dunk.
I'm Darius Baisley, and I'm down to dunk.
I'm Mike Muscala, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Poku, and I'm down to dunk.
I love cereal. Captain Crunch, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Cracklin' Oat Bran.
Oh, I can have these. I'm going to share with my team, but I'm going to hog most of them.
Welcome to Down to Dunk. I'm your host, Andrew Schlecht. We're part of the Athletic Podcast Network. Surprise Tuesday night pod. We're still having us tomorrow with Rafael Barlow, but we got the chance to get our man Sam Vecenie on the podcast. So Al and I are here with Sam. Sam, what is up?
Oh, I'm sorry. Was this not just a group prayer to that Poku intro? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I got confused. I didn't know we were live. Sorry. I thought this was just like a, exciting moment in our friendship.
Yeah, we're going to have Sam on and go through all the top prospects and talk about their fit with Poku. Forget HJ, forget Giddey. We just want to know how they fit with Poku.
How does everybody fit with Poku? So the draft is a week and change away, and the Thunder have the second pick, and it feels like Chet is going to be the guy. I think it's been reported. You just watch Chet play basketball, and you think this is everything the Thunder have been preparing for the past few years. Let's say that does happen. What does the fit of Chet and Shea and Giddey and Poku look like?
Yeah, so look, as much as I love Poku, let's remove him from this equation momentarily, just because I don't necessarily consider him as much of a core piece as the others.
Okay, all right.
Look, I think that what Chet does above all is he unlocks a big part of what Oklahoma City has wanted to do over the last few years. Like, you guys, certainly running this podcast and being Oklahoma City Thunder fans, have watched much more Oklahoma City basketball than I have over the last couple of years. But I am always struck by how important it is for them to run a 5-out offensive scheme. This is how guys like Isaiah Roby end up playing the 5 position, right? I think there are minimal numbers of teams in the NBA where Isaiah Roby would get any minutes at the 5, let alone substantial or lion's share of his minutes at the 5. We were just recording previously, and you mentioned how much Mark Daniel loves letting Darius Baisley grab and go and having 5 guys that can run out and go on the break. I think that having Chet just unlocks so many of the aspects of basketball that Oklahoma City has wanted to bring to the table now within this rebuild for a while. His ability to grab and go on the break, his ability to pass, his ability to dribble in the open court. I think I think the questions about his half court creation are valid, but it just helps in such a substantial way for them to play 5 out, to keep the lane open for Giddey and Shea drives, to be able to play the exact style of basketball they want to play. And oh, by the way, I think he is one of the best defensive prospects I've ever evaluated. Certainly in regard to his anticipation, I think he is the best prospect I've ever evaluated. There are obviously frame concerns there in terms of anchoring at the 5 position and everything, but he is such a smart, intuitive player that I just have such a strong belief that he's going to make it work, and that the Thunder could really desperately use someone that makes their overall project that they've been going down the road of make sense.
So we've been talking about Chet for a while now, and it's almost like we assume it's going to happen. However, Jack Miller, a guy who works for Establish the Run, he just tweeted that this time last week, Jabari Smith was around minus 500 to go first overall. Right now at Caesars Sports, Jabari is minus 120. Chet is minus 110, and Paulo is plus 600. If Chet goes number 1 to the Magic, I know that Jabari is number 1 on your board, but would you expect Oklahoma City to take Jabari, or do you feel like it's a toss-up at that point between him or Paulo or Jaden Ivey?
Boys, I have a little secret in the trust tree right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't assume that Jabari is number 1 on my board.
Whoa! He was though, right?
Yeah, he is. And I genuinely look, we just recorded for an hour, right? On the draft as a whole for the NBA show for the Slam and Jam podcast that'll come out on Saturday, right?
Yeah.
And I love all 4 of these guys. Like I went on for minutes about how much I love all 4 of these guys as prospects. And I do. This is not a slight at Jabari, having him down, at number 1 or number 2 or wherever I may have him. Go subscribe to The Athletic, find out whenever I release my draft guide on either Monday or Tuesday. But I am such a big fan of Jabari Smith that I would take him at number 2. I don't know that it's like fait accompli that he would go number 2, if only because this Oklahoma City front office does such a good job of spreading misinformation, being incredibly opaque. And I mean that in the most complimentary sense. You could tell me that they look to move down. You could tell me that they take any of the top 4 guys. I think that, Sam Presti does as good of a job with this in the draft process as anyone. And it's an immense credit to them. I personally would take Jabari if he fell to number 2, because I'm assuming that would mean that Chet Holmgren would be going number 1. But we'll see what Oklahoma City does. I think that Jabari, for many of the same reasons that I just expounded upon on why I like Chet Holmgren for the Thunder, I think he makes a lot of sense for Oklahoma City as well with Jabari.
Yeah, personality wise, I think it's been like well documented, like the competitiveness and everything about Chet. I haven't heard a ton about Jabari Smith's personality. Can you weigh in on that at all?
Yeah, it's he's a kid that is, Bruce Pearl has said it publicly, like he's very much like everyone's best friend on the Auburn basketball team, right? Having said that, like you talk to coaches that played against him, that dude's a killer out there. Yeah. Like that dude is talking shit and like going for it. If you guys remember correctly, I think it was against Syracuse, maybe. He like hit a 3 and then screamed at Jim Boeheim, like for having someone like not big enough or not athletic enough guard him. Like the audacity of Jim Boeheim to guard him with someone so disrespectful. Or like he yelled that like you have to like cool him down or some shit like that. Yeah, Jabari's a killer. He's like it's the personality fit, like for Oklahoma City too. That's why I think that it's probably going to be one of those 2, depending on what Orlando does at number 1. I will say this too. You know what though? Like Jaden Ivey, like also, absolutely wildly competitive.
Yeah, we've heard about the defensive side of the ball with Jabari Smith. What are the limits of that? Like, because it seems like he has a pretty good frame. He's still super young. Is there a scenario where long term he could play small ball 5 for the Thunder?
It's not impossible. Like it's very theoretical right now. It's not impossible. It depends on how his frame fills out. He has pretty big shoulders. Like he has everything that you would think is going to allow him to get to, I think he's, what do I have him listed at? Let's pull up a draft guide. I think he's at like 225 right now, if I remember correctly. Let's see here. Yeah, 220. He could get to 235 pretty easy, I think, and just be like one of those dudes that's like so strong and he can get to any of his spots almost whenever he wants. Would I rather play him with a center? Probably. Is there a world where if a team goes super small that he's the center? Possibly. Like if you're playing against the Miami Heat and Bam Adebayo is their center, do I think Jabari Smith could play center? Sure. Like I think if they're playing the 76ers and Joel Embiid is their center, do I want Jabari Smith banging down low with Joel Embiid? No, I don't. Absolutely not. So it's situational. It's going to be very, very dependent.
What do you think about his like best court pairing or what you would look for in a front court partner? Because we heard a lot about the
Yeah.
Auburn guards and like how bad of a fit they were for Jabari. But on the other side, like he got to play next to Walker Kessler, which
Yeah.
probably helped him a lot defensively. So who would you be looking at, or what type of player would you be looking at to pair him with?
Yeah, I like him a lot in look, he's not Giannis defensively. Like he's not even like Giannis is one of the best defensive players to ever play basketball. But I like him in that like scrambling, roaming role pretty much. Like the ability to play in a drop coverage scheme where he's the backline, defender that's helping and tagging and then recovering out to the corner and then wreaking havoc kind of everywhere on the court in the middle of the time. I would say that's my kind of ideal way of thinking of Jabari Smith, but he can switch, I mean, like 2 through 4 very comfortably. There are probably some quicker ones that'll catch him, and there are stronger 5s that will catch him. Like he's not Scotty Barnes defensively. Like he's not, extremely switchable 1 through 5. He's not OG Anunoby. He's not, and like even Scotty had his troubles defensively dealing with ones this year, I thought. But he's not like OG Anunoby defensively. He's just a good, I think, all around team defender who can switch onto multiple positions, if not, probably not every position.
So I think a lot of Thunder fans have watched a lot of Paulo Banchero and have themselves wondering why not Paulo. Can you answer that question for the Thunder?
Yeah, look, if it was Paulo, I think it'd be fine. Like I look for. It's hard for me to answer that question because I have Jabari Smith and Chet Holmgren as better prospects than Paulo. The reason that I have those two as better prospects than Paulo is that I think they have a better chance to be defensive difference makers while also being able to provide requisite offensive value. I don't see Paulo, and part of that question is I don't see any of these guys as number 1 options on a title team.
Okay.
So if I saw any of these guys like that, the defensive fit questions for me would become drastically less important. Like if I saw Paulo Banchero as being a 27.8 rebound, 8 assists per game guy, I would just take him at number 1.
Mm-hmm.
I see him more as like a 22 point per game, 8 rebound, 6 assist guy that plays okay defense. I think he's going to get burned against guards on the perimeter, 1s and 2s. I think he does a pretty good job positionally. I think that he knows where to rotate when he's engaged, particularly. I think the engagement for him at times this year on the defensive end, like just wasn't always there in the way you want it to be. It's hard because like I don't want to make a case purely against Paulo because I love Paulo as a prospect. Like I think he's going to make an all-star team. And I think that if you're drafting purely on offensive upside, I think Paulo probably has a more well-rounded offensive game as a creator than anyone else in the class. I think there's probably a world where Jabari Smith just becomes so good at getting to his spots and shooting over the top of defenses that he might just be the guy at the end of the day. But it's hard. Like I value defensive versatility and flexibility at a real level. And I worry that Paulo is somewhere between the 4 and the 5, where you're always going to want to have a center with him out there, but he's also not quite mobile enough to like consistently deal with perimeter players. And that could become a real hassle for him.
I wanted to ask you about the Shaedon Sharp rumors. Jonathan Gavoni, he had like an ideal draft article about the Thunder and had Sharp falling to 12. And then in the little blurb said that Sharp's camp has OKC as like their top choice and they don't really care where they go in terms of like the spot. They're really focused on like his long-term potential. Do you think that's a realistic scenario that Shaedon Sharp could fall to 12 based on what you've been hearing?
I think that anything could happen with Shaedon Sharp on draft night, like within relative reason, like him falling to number 22 would be a stunner or something like that.
Right.
But him falling to 12, I would be surprised, but I wouldn't be completely like baffled by it. I mean, this is a guy that is a real question mark to NBA teams on some level. And I think the teams would like more information than what they're going to acquire on Shaedon Sharp before the draft. And anytime that there is a real absence of information involving a lot of decision makers where a primary goal for them is to stay employed, I think that there can be a substantial sense of risk aversion. Yeah. And that's not to say, again, that like Shaedon Sharp is going to fall to 12. I think that he's in play, probably starting at 4 and 5, to be honest. But I think it is a potential possibility for him to fall to 12, if only because, there is always a sense of risk aversion from NBA teams, and teams don't have enough intel on Shaedon and can't acquire enough before the draft, regardless of the homework that they do, to know what they're getting entirely.
Mm-hmm.
So there's,
it's not a fun answer, is it? Right? Like it's kind of a shit answer.
Let's say with Shaedon is like, there's nothing like substantial out there right now that you can point to and be like, yeah, this is why he's going to be this, or this is why he's going to be that. Like there's just so much mystery with him, and it makes, he honestly makes this draft really fun, and especially he's going to make draft night really fun because you just don't know where he's going to go that night. The Thunder have the 12th pick. There's a lot of really interesting prospects in that range. There's these wings like AJ Griffin. Johnny Davis is more of a guard, but could play on the wing. Ben Mathurin. Who's your favorite of that kind of group if the Thunder were looking to draft like a wing or some kind of shooting on the wing?
Yeah, look, I would go Ben Mathurin if he falls to 12 because I really like Ben. I think Ben's upside's a little bit higher than what has been kind of stated. Like, I think everyone thinks of him as productive college guy, right? Whereas he's still very young. Like, he played this year, if I remember correctly, at 19 years old, and then turned 20 in the pre-draft process. So like he got a lot better throughout the season at actually being able to attack closeouts, stop, look like around the court and play with real processing speed and make passes. This is a guy that like is from Montreal and like, from what I gather, like didn't grow up like in the most ideal environment, and then didn't get like phenomenal coaching until he went down to the NBA Academy in Latin America, in Mexico City, or the Latin American NBA Academy in Mexico City. So I think that his pathway and his growth trajectory is probably a little bit different than others. Yeah. And it's worth acknowledging that. And we saw an enormous leap from him from year 1 to year 2 at Arizona. And it wouldn't surprise me if we saw another fairly sizable, substantial leap going from Arizona to the NBA. Now, I love him as a shot maker. I think that he has a real sense of the moment. Like, he's just totally unafraid in every regard. Yep. You watch the game against TCU in the NCAA tournament, like he wanted the ball. He wanted that moment. I think that he'd really fit as a floor spacer next to, guys like Josh Giddey, next to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. It makes a lot of sense to me to kind of implement that. And, AJ Griffin as well is just such a philosophy-based ideal, where I would understand. The way I've explained AJ Griffin is that I think you should have AJ Griffin at number 5, or you should have him like 12th or 11th or something like that.
Mhm.
Because you either buy into him regaining some of the athleticism and flexibility that he had at lower levels when he was 16 years old and played at a really high level for Team USA and at Archbishop Stepanak and places like that. Or you think that, he's been hurt many times over now, junior year, senior year, preseason coming into his Duke season. And you worry about him regaining that. And there are significant defensive questions that will exist just long-term with him. So if you buy into him regaining that athleticism, you should buy into him as a real substantial shot maker that is different than anyone else outside of the top 4.
Yeah.
If you don't, then you probably shouldn't take him in the top 10. You probably shouldn't take him at 12, to be honest. And then you kind of have to make a informed decision after that.
I wanted to ask you about that idea, because it does feel like that's part of the pitch with AJ Griffin. Like, you have to buy into him regaining some of this athleticism.
Yeah.
Are there any recent examples you can think of a prospect who had a similar trajectory where they were super explosive, lost some of their athleticism, then gained it back? Because it would be a lot easier to buy into it if I could see an example of this happening. I believe Sam is frozen.
Okay, Sam is frozen. You have frozen him with such a question, Al.
Oh, he's back.
Oh, did I die briefly?
You did.
There we go. You're back though.
Yeah. You're making me look up context and trying to remember things. Yeah, I'm trying to think of it, to be honest. It's I'm running through drafts here, in the past, to try and come up with an example of this. I think it is very difficult to come up with an example of this.
Which is fine. It's just when people make the pitch for him, they say that as if it's just gonna happen. He'll get further away from the injuries and it'll just come back. And on the one hand, his injuries don't seem that severe. It's not like he tore his ACL, had crazy ligament damage.
Yeah.
They were knee sprains and random things. So I don't know. I'm so torn on him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, look, I'm in your boat. I would say I'm lower on him than others. Yeah, I'm really trying to dig deep here, man. I'm back in 2015 now. It's not ideal. It's hard to find. Most of the time, I feel like these guys probably get worse. But the problem with AJ is if he doesn't.
Is OG an example of that to you at all?
Yeah, but OG, I think, was always on a bit of a different plane because he's just much bigger and had a bit more flexibility to begin with. But OG is maybe the best one.
Yeah.
To be honest. Yeah, that's hard. That's a really tough one. I don't have a great example of it though. And look, this is why I have AJ at 11 or 12 or something like that. I am not quite as in as the internet seems to be, but I also understand if on a philosophical basis you just buy into the shot making and the potential for shot creation and that's what you value in the draft, I get it. I'm good with that at the end of the day. If you want to have him at 5 or 6 on your board, it's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part of it is that we don't have access to that I think has to be considered is I have no idea what his medical records look like. They could look good. They could not look good. I'm not saying one way or another, but it's absolutely something NBA teams will want to take a look at. And that is something that I don't know. It's something that, frankly, there might be NBA teams that don't know just because, CAA might be withholding some info. But it's fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Everybody.
But it's something worth considering in the public. I'm sorry. Again, I cut you off.
That's okay. That's okay. People want to talk about.
I'm thrown off because I told you guys I had to leave at 7 here. Yes. And I don't. It's fine. Let's just go for, as long as we need.
Okay, cool. So everybody wants to talk about the Thunder trading for specifically like the 7th pick is widely known to be available because the Blazers want to move up, and the Thunder can help them just acquire more picks and more assets so they can eventually get what they want. They can't directly give them what they want. So, but let's say on draft night that happens, the Thunder get the 7th pick. Who are the players that are worth acquiring around 7 that you just would never have a chance of getting at 12?
So I want to be clear. I would not do this if I was Oklahoma City.
Okay.
I am not a big enough fan of the leap into that tier.
Mhm.
I would imagine that the guy that I have higher than anyone else is probably Jeremy Sohan.
Mhm.
I have Jeremy Sohan at 5 on my board.
Yeah.
I will give that one away.
Yeah.
I love Jeremy Sohan and his defensive potential unconditionally. I think he's a legitimate potential all defense guy in the NBA. He is switchable 1 through 5. You go back and you watch the tape against North Carolina. He was guarding Armando Bacot and he was guarding Caleb Love and RJ Davis, like, one possession after another. Right. And he proved this all year. He is phenomenal on that end. Offensively, I think he has real tools. He can handle the ball in space at a high level, despite being, a 6'9" guy with long arms and real athletic fluidity. Like he is I know some people have pointed to the 37% mark as a catch and shoot guy.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything broken with the shot. I don't think he's a movement shooter by any stretch of the imagination. Like he's not going to be running off screens and anything, but if he can continue to improve that mark as a catch and shoot player in the half court, he has substantial potential as an advantage creator on the second side rotation, where if someone closes out to him hard, I mean, he's going to be able to collapse the defense in an instant because of how quickly he is able to put pressure on the paint with how long his strides are and how quick he's able to make that happen. So look, I think he has really high upside at the end of the day, and also has like a relatively high floor. Like I think that the floor is, somewhat similar to what Herb Jones was this year for New Orleans. And I think that the ceiling is like extremely, extremely high if the offensive game comes together.
Yeah, I've been picking the Chet Holmgren's Jeremy Sohan front court for a while here on this podcast.
Oh my God. Oh, I'm moving to Oklahoma City. I'm leaving Australia.
I've been wanting it to happen so bad. So, there are Thunder fans that just have such bad Andre Robertson PTSD that they just want nothing to do with like great defenders who don't have a great offensive game. And I'm just like, I don't know. He's just awesome. And I love his story.
Yeah,
I just love everything about him.
The last podcast I did with Fred Katz,
Yeah.
He christened these guys the Josh Eustace and Andre Robertson Hall of Famers.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what people are worried about. And I think one thing you could help us with in like talking us off that ledge, do you feel like Jeremy Sohan is a willing shooter? Because that's been a problem with Thunder players in the past. They just aren't willing to take the shot.
Yeah, I think he will be. Look, he takes them now. He's more of like a jab step and try and shoot now. As opposed to like, hey, I'm just going to catch it and fire. I think that he's smart enough as a processor and smart enough like as a basketball player to where he'll realize that he has to take those. And I think he'll improve to where he can. If he doesn't shoot it though, then you obviously don't want him shooting it, but I don't look, there's real offensive downside with Sohan, but I also think that the offensive upside, given his ability to handle, given his ability to pass, if the shooting comes together, I mean, his ceiling on the way that he's going to impact winning basketball is immensely high. Like I often try and think about that. Like if, say, a player is able to improve their worst skill and get it to a manageable level, what is their level as a prospect, right? Someone like Dyson Daniels, if he improves as a shooter, I think he is an absolutely outstanding, phenomenal connective tissue piece that will immediately help you win games. Someone, I'm trying to think of like another example, like someone like, if someone like Mark Williams can shoot it though, like if he ever developed an 18-footer, well, he still has some defensive, mobility concerns. So he'd still probably be like in a similar boat, I think, to where he is now. He'd be a little bit higher because he'd be able to stay on the court offensively in a different way than what he is now. But like you improve his worst skill, it doesn't drastically change things. If you improve Jeremy Sohan's shooting to where it's passable, I think he's an all-star. Yeah. Like, I think he is that good at everything else that he brings to the table.
And if he doesn't, which as Thunder fans, that's where we're assuming this is headed. What is he? Like if he turns out to be a guy that just like won't shoot, because we've lived through this over and over again.
Yeah, like four-man version of Herb Jones is kind of what I'm envisioning. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is like not look, you don't want to take that guy at number 7,
right?
Maybe. But I just did a redraft of the 2021 NBA draft like a month or two ago, and I have real substantial concerns about Herb Jones's offense, even moving forward, given what we saw this year. I still took Herb Jones in a draft that is much better than this one, 12th, so 11th maybe. So yeah, like I would take him at 12 if he's there, and I would not even think twice.
Al, is there anybody else in that range you want to talk about, or do you want to move on to the second round pick?
Well, just really quick. So let's say this scenario where Chet goes number 1, we take Jabari. I know a lot of Thunder fans are interested in the center prospects.
Yeah.
If they were both there, Mark Williams and Jalen Duren at 12, do you see one of them as a better fit with Jabari as a front court pairing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually haven't thought. This is one that I have not thought about until this moment now. Particularly like a Jabari, Oklahoma City fit with one of these two. I've thought about a lot of iterations of these things, and I've not thought about this one until now. So I will say that I like the idea of Josh Giddey throwing lobs to Jalen Duren a lot.
Yeah.
Jalen Duren, I think, is the best rim runner in this class. He is the best lob catcher. He is like a genuinely elite, like DeAndre Jordan level lob catcher. He like, there are moments where he is full speed sprinting, either, downhill in a pick and roll play or out in transition, where someone throws one that's off target. He will go up with one hand at full speed behind his head, catch it and dunk it all in one motion. Like, he is an elite see ball, get ball, grab, finish, dunk, like all in one fell swoop prospect. And that has real appeal to me with them. I think that my answer would be Jalen Duren. But again, though, like, what did we just talk about at the start of this podcast? We talked about how what Oklahoma City wants to do is they want to play 5 out. Like, they want to play with as much, offensive versatility and guys who can grab and go and guys who can really speed up the offense as possible. And neither of these guys do that. Like, I'm not a buyer in Jalen Duren's skill game in the way some other evaluators seem to be. I don't know that either of these guys makes sense for the style of basketball that Oklahoma City seems to have wanted to build over the course of the last couple of years, at the very least.
Yeah. This is why, like, to me, Chet seems like the guy that they would want, because he's just multi-skilled, multi-tooled. And then if you get him, then like he's your center, and then you just have multi-skilled, multi-tool players all around him. That's why I just don't know that I buy into taking one of those guys that high in the draft. And then also, if you wanted a guy that could just be a rim runner, they're available all the time, and the Thunder have the assets to go get them. And so I just don't like the idea of going and getting one of these guys at 12 when somebody like Johnny Davis, or if Sohan's there, or anybody else, Malachi Branham is there. I just like the idea of getting somebody that you couldn't get in Oklahoma City, or that would be really difficult to get here, because the Thunder have signed a guy like Nerlens Noel, has willingly come to Oklahoma City, and to me, it's just easier to get big guys, and just don't use your valuable draft picks on guys that you could potentially get in free agency or via trade more easily. That's kind of my philosophy.
I agree with you for what it's worth. That's what I would do.
I want to ask you about one more guy in the 12 range, which is Usman Dieng, because I kind of get the pitch for him, but I'm wondering if OKC is the best place for him to be fully actualized, because when I see people talk about him, it's always about the second half of the season where it seemed like he started to show a lot of flashes as a primary creator for them. In Oklahoma City, would he, like, what's his off-ball game like?
It's fine. It's very predicated on him knocking down shots. And up until the second half of this season, he hasn't really consistently done that. Like at any point of his career, even before he got to Australia, like even when he was playing with Victor Wembanyama in France, like he was always more of like a point forward, point guard type, as opposed to like guy who knocks down shots. So I think the shot's improved. I think he has a shot to be like a valuable catch and shoot guy. The thing that worries me is like, I think he might be getting overrated a little bit as an athlete. He is not explosive at all. I have a lower grade on him. I think I have him like 16 or 17, something like that. He would not really be in consideration for me with this Thunder pick, but there are fans of him. I expect him to go in this range, like 8, 7, 8, 14, something like that. Mm-hmm. I would, I get it. I think he processes the game really well. I think he's a high level passer, which I'm sure appeals to Oklahoma City because they have valued these guys in the past, but not quite athletic enough for me.
Yeah. He gets labeled as like raw or like not ready. And like a lot of those guys are just like really athletic it seems like. So maybe
he's more like a Cadillac. Yeah. Like you watch him, like it's very smooth. Like and the other thing is like, he never gets all the way to the rim. Like he's always trying to like stop and pop for that little floater. He doesn't really pressure the rim in the way that I would want someone to pressure the rim next to Shea and Josh, even though like Shea can do it, obviously.
Mm-hmm. I just have to ask you a personal question. Your last, not a real personal question, but in your last top 100 that's on The Athletic, you have EJ Liddell in like the second round range. Do you still have him in that range?
I think I have him at like 26, something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I just love him. I think he'd be great. I think he's going to be great. The Thunder don't really have a pick to get EJ, but I can just see him playing in the league next year. I think he's going to be great.
Yeah, I can too. I don't buy the shot as much as some people do. Okay. I know that he shot 37% from three this year, but it's a very flat shot. That worries me as he moves back to NBA distance. I actually think that he shot, if I remember correctly, I mean, I can pull this number up. I'm sure I wrote about it in the draft guide, but like, I think he shot a little bit better from NBA distance than what I would have thought the mechanics would have allowed when he took those shots this year. Yeah. But I would have to look that up. I don't love the shot. I think it's a very flat trajectory. And I think that, he's working with great trainers out in Santa Barbara. And I think that they have a chance to make it work, but we'll see. Look, I went to Ohio State. Like it is kind of a personal question to me. Like I want these guys to succeed, but like, like I would love nothing more than to have EJ Liddell like fourth on my board, but I just can't quite get there.
I want to ask you about pick 34. Thunder traded pick 30 this week. At 34, we talked about movement shooting earlier with Mathurin. Is there anyone in that early second round range who could provide some movement shooting? Because that's definitely something that Thunder fans want.
Yeah, the guy that strikes me, so Max Christie, could fall to 34. I think that's not impossible. In fact, like very well could be on the board. That's one that makes sense. Caleb Houston's a pretty good movement shooter. I don't really have that high of a grade on Houston. I don't love really anything else that he does on the court, but he can shoot off of movement for sure. The guy that I like a little bit more than most, I think, is Gabriel Procida out of Italy. Real live athlete at 6'8", really moves well. Great shooter off movement, not just a good shooter, but like a phenomenal high level shooter off of movement. Defends pretty well as well. Like I have him at 32, and I worry that I didn't go high enough. And I feel like I'm probably higher on him the most at 32.
Yeah, and the Thunder have obviously seen him because they travel everywhere. I don't know that they've seen him for a fact. I just know the Thunder and the way that they work, and just assume that they have seen him multiple times and don't shy away from taking international prospects. In fact, like they lean toward taking international prospects. So I think that should be somebody that Thunder fans consider.
Yeah, I mean, they took Vit Krejci when Vit was not a top 100 player on my board that year.
I remember scouring the internet for Vit Krejci information when they took him that high.
I was like, it was funny because so the way that the draft works at The Athletic is I send off a bunch of blurbs to our editors ahead of time for draft coverage while I'm live doing a live show. And like, they fucking draft Vit Krejci, and I'm just like, I've watched him, I've seen him. I think he was like 115 for me or something. I have nothing prepared on him because I thought he was coming off of a knee surgery too, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Like,
he missed his whole first season, or what would have been his first season. He was rehabbing here in OKC. Like they brought him onto the Blue so they could rehab him here. And
I've learned not to doubt that Sam Presti knows what he's doing because he absolutely 100% is categorically, unequivocally smarter than I am. But that was that was one that took me by surprise.
Yeah. Alex is not just sitting there chewing his fingernails. His computer shut down because we've been podcasting for roughly 2.5 hours here. So if you want more draft coverage, listen to Saturday Slam and Jam this Saturday on the Athletic NBA Show feed. We're going to talk to Sam a lot there. So, Sam, thanks so much for your time today here on Down to Dunk. I know that our listeners appreciate it. And if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that so you can watch Alex look like he's endlessly chewing his fingernails at the end of the show. And you can watch the show. You know, you can see what we look like if you're just listening to the pod. So that's kind of cool. So Sam, thanks so much. Look for Sam's draft guide coming up early next week. It is worth the subscription to The Athletic alone. So if you're not subscribed to The Athletic, go to theathletic.com/downtodunk and get your subscription for $1 a month for 6 months. Alex is back here for our exit.
Woo, here we go.
Sam, thanks so much, man.
Yeah, of course. Go subscribe to the podcast. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel for the podcast. Penny and I are releasing a bunch of videos.
Yes.
As always, boys.
Yes.
I'm ecstatic to always talk to you guys. I have the most fun doing the show. Wait until you guys see the results of the terrific trivia game that we played earlier today. Alex set up some great questions, and I'm, finally, very, very pleased to have him come on and, have some fun here.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Sam.
Of course.